BC decides, and the results are indecisive. Now, the election was over the weekend, and we don't have all of the results for the election. Of course, some of the ridings have come in, my riding disappointing me by going green. This was a fight between the New Democrats and the Conservatives, and somehow, that's where I'm at. But let's get into the rest of the province, because this is a big contentious thing. BC election, EB Rustad win election as their parties battle over power. So they've both won their seats, of course, the leaders of those parties. The leader of the Greens did not win her seat. First to know, lost her seat. But there was two ridings that did go green, and that may be a deciding factor on coalitions. It may be a deciding factor on whether we end up at the polls again in the next year or so. And this could be a busy time politically in British Columbia. Of course, Global News reporting that NDP getting 44.6% of the vote. Conservatives getting 43.6% of the vote. Very, very close. And then the Green Party with 8.2% of the vote. Independents grabbing some of that as well, but not enough to be decisive in this, but maybe in some ridings. Now, Elections BC, they're telling us, we don't have the results yet. We brought in all of this stuff for electronic voting and all of this so that we could have an election result sooner, but it turns out even that stuff hasn't helped us, and that may be a contentious issue moving forward. But this is the result. Final count is scheduled for between October 26th and 28th. That is, you can go to their website and you can see that. But that's where we're at right now. It's kind of in limbo for a lot of these ridings that are very close, and we'll get into that. Now, BC election recounts triggered in two ridings, delaying the results for a week, reported by richmondnews.com. And this is leaving a lot of people in the balance, because there was a lot of fishy, funny stuff going on surrounding early voting. Some of the ballot boxes had some malfunctions, and then call-in ballots because of poor weather. Again, we'll get into that in a little bit here. But Vancouver, British Columbia, redraw political landscapes with manual recounts triggered in two key ridings after a nail-biting provincial election that has yet to produce a clear winner. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this turns out. Urbanized is reporting that 2024 BC election results show that winning in Surrey is critically important, and this is for British Columbia as a whole. With 45 to 44, maybe 46 to 44. We don't know. It's all up in the air. And even with CBC News showing that, and you can see in the darker colors are the undecided ones, whereas the brighter colors are the ones that have been decided. Green across the province here. Big province, but this is where most of the contention is happening. It's in the Surrey area, in Vancouver and Surrey. But this is where it gets pretty fishy, because you look at some of these ridings, they are awfully close. They're very, very, very close, and we still don't have all of the mail-in ballots. There's been reports that some of the mail-in ballots won't be accepted because they're mailed after a certain date. If you're going to mail in, make sure you mail in before the election. That's important. But yes, some of these ridings are very contentious, and they're very, very close, and they could flip. And this is a reality. Probably the closest one is this Wandafuka Malahat over here, where 20 votes may decide this election. This is really interesting. Now, of course, in each riding, they get their representative, and that representative goes to the Legislative Assembly, being that MLA for that area. So the more MLAs you get, the more you have in the Legislative Assembly. So, and then that's how they form government. But of course, we're sitting at a projected 46 to 45. in favor of the NDP, which could end up with the two Greens being that decided vote. And even if it flips and it goes Conservative, it may end up being a conservative government with a coalition. They could form a coalition and take that away from voters, essentially is what it is. They would take that away from the voters. But this is where some of the contention comes in, especially around the idea of bad weather. So we had an atmospheric storm, as they call it in Canada now. We call them atmospheric storms. We used to call it the Pineapple Express. That was the El Nino year, when we get lots and lots and lots of rain. It's normal. It happens in a cyclical thing. You have your El Ninos and your El Ninas. And either you get a drier winter or you get a wetter winter. And it looks like we're on board for a wetter winter. Boy, am I looking forward to that. But nonetheless, let's get into this, because Wyatt Claypool actually was talking about some of the contention over the call-in voting, which was an impromptu thing that they did because of poor weather. And this may end up becoming one of the most contentious things about this whole election moving forward.
See a lot of different things happening here, because I'm not sure if you guys were aware of, there was this nutty thing going on with telephone voting on like the last day, because certain polling stations were closed. They were calling people, and I heard it wasn't just voluntary people calling in to vote. I heard that they were calling people and saying, you haven't voted. Do you want to vote? Just get your voter ID card out and read us your number or whatever, and read your driver's license number or whatever to us, and then tell us who you're going to vote, like you're ordering a pizza at Domino's. If that was going on, which I had heard had been going on, dude, some of these ridings that are super close, they might have to recall the entire riding, because if there's 500 people who voted by telephone and the person who won only won by like 100, 150 votes, dude, that can't stand up. Like, this entire election might, as much as people were kind of joking about it, this entire election might end up in the Supreme Court. And another rub here, actually, I forgot.
And I'll leave a link for this video in the description down below. He makes a lot of great points in this, and Wyatt Claypool, obviously a great political commentator. Go check out his channel, and the National Telegraph, and make sure you're subscribed there, as well as subscribed here, of course. But moving on, the BC election, mail-in ballots may benefit the Conservatives in the final count. It's been shown that polls taken before Election Day found that mail-in voters tended to lean right, and that could be a beneficial thing. We'll see how it goes depending on which riding you're talking about, because some of the ridings, I mean, we're talking a few thousand votes away from the Conservatives, but other ridings, again, 20 votes in that one riding, that could decide the election. That's crazy. And of course, if you add in what Wyatt was talking about with the mail-in ballot contention, or sorry, the call-in ballots, where they were actually calling people up, if these reports are true, calling people up and asking them if they wanted to vote. That's not how elections work. This isn't how it works in Canada. It's a voluntary thing, and it's not a delivery service to your door. That's not the way we would expect this. But nonetheless, this is a historic election, obviously, as I don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry, I'm not going to even try. But whatever the outcome, he says, Canada is witnessing political history. BC Conservatives' John Rustad has pulled off something no other politician in democratic world has done, from basically nothing to this unbelievable result in just months. And this is absolutely true. In just months, John Rustad turned the Conservatives from relative obscurity into a political powerhouse in this province. It's actually astonishing what he was able to pull off. And I think the political will was there. It was largely a giant swath of people that did just go through COVID and are witnessing some of the largest increases in crime in our province's history, in our nation's history, under the watch of the British Columbia NDP. And this is what people are witnessing this, and they don't want to vote for the people that during the COVID times voted along the lines with the NDP, which was the United Party, which got rebranded to the United Party, was formerly the Liberals. John Rustad was booted from that party, and then decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to take my principled position that I had always held, and I'm going to put that into the Conservative Party. And what do you know? People have principled positions, and they're voting for that. And no matter what the media is trying to spin, and in fact, after the election, posted here by Billboard Chris, CBC was trying to spin stuff. And this is post-election, talking to John Rustad about how the election went and some of the policies. Is it the job of the CBC to be debating, or is it a job for them to interview these political candidates, or in this case this MLA?
We knew it was going to be tight, and so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here over the next week.
3 of 4 seats in Richmond. What does that tell you?
Well, Richmond, both Richmond and Surrey, really, when you look at what the Conservative vote represented, it was pretty much, rural BC, but also a lot of ethnic minorities, whether it's Chinese Canadians or Indo-Canadians. And so a lot of those groups came together and said, they had enough, whether it was the drugs and crime problems, whether it was SOGI that's going in our schools. There's a lot of things that were driving people that wanted to see change.
Drugs and crime and SOGI are 2 ways to scare people, basically.
Well, I wouldn't say that necessarily, but parents are very concerned about their kids. They're concerned about their own safety. And
sure, but is there anything to it? But I don't want to get into it because we do every time, but really, is there anything to fear?
Sorry, he says he doesn't want to get into it, but then he gets into it. This is really ridiculous. This is punditry from the interviewer, and he's getting into debate territory where he's trying to, and you'll see here, he's trying to debunk something that's absolutely true.
Fear from SOGI, really?
Well, when your 6-year-old boy, his grandson, comes home and sitting at the dinner table and saying, Grandpa, is it okay that I'm a boy? At 6 years old, should they really be asking those questions?
Why not? Why wouldn't they ask a question?
Well, that's a question I think that the electorate looks at and says, they don't find that acceptable. When you look at also, quite frankly, the pornography that is in our schools.
There is no pornography involved in the SOGI program. There is no pornography in the SOGI program. And I don't want to go through this again because we go through it every time. But let's also talk about the crime and drug factor too, because you're in Richmond warning them.
Okay, so he says that there is none of this in the school program. Now, I have to pause the video right here because right after, Billboard Chris puts in imagery of material that is available in the SOGI program and is available in the school program. I'll leave a link in the description down below. You can go view it for yourself, or you could share it around. You can share it with people so they know what's actually in this program in British Columbia. But this is why parents are saying no to the NDP, and they did in droves. They absolutely did in droves. And if you look at the map, in fact, it's mostly the minorities, people from other countries that have immigrated here and legally become Canadian citizens and voters, are in the massive amount of people that are voting against this stuff. Exactly, but nonetheless, this is the CBC, and they're going to report the way they report. I'll report the way I report. Check out the link in the description down below if you want to share this material around with other parents so that they can see what is actually being viewed by children, what is being shown to children in these schools. But nonetheless, John Rustad winning his seat, and we'll see where it goes. But this is John Rustad in his victory speech.
I'm optimistic that the people in this province are hungry for that change. And I can tell you something, what we have seen to date, because of the work that we've been doing, because of the pressure that we're putting on this government, think about it. They flipped on the carbon tax. They flipped on decriminalization. They flipped on involuntary care. They flipped on a whole bunch of things because they could see the damage that was being done. But I bet you this, and I'll say this right now, that if we have the unfortunate situation of David Eby being in a minority government, he will not do a single thing that he has promised. And that is something I'm almost guaranteed. And as the Conservative Party of British Columbia, if we're in that situation, we are going to make it as difficult as possible for this NDP to do any more destruction to this province.
Man, big props to him for saying that. In fact, that is what we need. We need somebody to be standing in the way of the NDP from destroying the province any further. We didn't get the results of a majority Conservative that we hoped for, but hey, at least we've got somebody to stymie the NDP from destroying the place even worse. Now, again, promises, like he said, the promises that he's made, all of this, the freebies and all of these things that he said, David Eby said in the last days of the election, you can guarantee to just expect none of that to come to any fruition. But that is the political game. Make promises, break those promises, get your office, and disappoint the average person. Anyway, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of all of this. Let me know what you think. If you're from outside of British Columbia and you're tuning in and you're paying attention to this, what do you think of the internal politics of the province? And what's happening here? How crazy is it that, 2 ridings went green? Unbelievable. This is the socialist hellscape that we live in British Columbia. It seems like fair weather tends to breed this kind of thing, but well, we'll see how it goes. Leave a comment in the comment section down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.